with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a podcast reviewing one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work at obsessiveviewer.com, and if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. This week on the Patreon, I've just released my part 4 of my 6-part read-along review of Stephen King's Everything's Eventual, and on Tuesday of this week, I posted my latest full-length Patreon potpourri episode where I review 4 movies I've watched recently. This week, I covered 4 Apple TV Plus movies, Flora and Son, Fingernails, Tetris, and The Beanie Bubble. And as well, on Patreon, my immediate reaction review of Bradley Cooper's Maestro was posted on the Patreon this week as well. Again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for all that and a crap load more content. Consider checking that out and help support the show. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer and on TikTok at OV Podcasts. And today on the show, we'll be reviewing the new Eli Roth movie, Thanksgiving, which is currently out in theaters, and we'll also be reviewing Please Don't Destroy, the Treasure of Foggy Mountain, which is streaming on Peacock. And joining me today to do that is my friend and IFJA colleague, Brent Leuthold, whose written reviews, as well as his Awake in the Dark podcast, can be found at awakeinthedark.com. Thank you so much for joining me, Brent. How is it going this lovely Sunday evening?
It's going great. Nice. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining me. It was kind of a last minute thing. I saw Thanksgiving today and then came home and watched Please Don't Destroy. And then now we're here. Wow. And yeah, it's been an eventful day. Yeah. Well, not eventful, really. It's just been, I've watched movies. So pretty much a normal day. But how have you been? And if you want, feel free to tell the listeners about Awake in the Dark and anything you've posted recently too.
Yeah, I did a review for Next Goal Wins last week, which that's now in theaters. That came out a couple days ago. So that was my most recent written review. My one for Thanksgiving, which we're talking about tonight, obviously is coming out tomorrow. Nice. Should be writing about Napoleon, most likely the week after that. Maybe Dream Scenario the week after that. We're both starting to get into like the IFC, the for consideration sort of stuff. We're getting screeners, so it's kind of just. This is kind of the time of year where I'm like, well, I don't try to have too strict of a review schedule because I don't really know what we're going to be getting, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I haven't really done the podcast in like months just because I don't have a good reason. I just haven't gotten anyone in the studio, and I don't know. I like doing in studio more than virtual, so I totally at some point. That. Yeah, at some point, we'll do. We'll. I can say this: we'll definitely do a top 10 because we actually didn't do one earlier this year for 20, whatever year we are. We didn't end up recording that episode, which is a bummer.
That is a bummer.
You have to go on my social media to find out how much I love Tar and all sorts of other ones from last year. But I can pretty much. I will really, really try to commit to doing that next year, and then we'll probably do like an awards talk too before the Oscars.
Nice.
So I think those two I could say pretty comfortably. Maybe I'll try to get something awardsy in here by the end of the year. That would be kind of nice. But yeah, a podcast friend has kind of slowed down. But this is fun. This is fun doing these, and I mean this is kind of nice because like just doing these virtually is. Well, it's easy for me.
Right. It's pretty easy for me. I've adapted to it well. I mean, it's been so not to like reignite things. I don't know, redress things. I don't know what word I'm trying to say, but almost 2 years ago now, I moved from the west side of Indianapolis to the north side of Indianapolis. And because of that, like, I don't have people in studio to record. Like, I have not had a single two-person recording in person since I moved here, and it's all been virtual, and it's going really well. Like, I'm really enjoying it and everything. But it's like, I get that. I get that. I kind of miss having, you know, people here, but also I've got my cat, so she's fine. So
I'm trying to think, like, this year even. So the decent amount of ones that I've done on Awake in the Dark have been virtual anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So I should probably just be like, yeah, just sort of, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, yeah, it's fine. Just the virtual stuff is cool and everything. But yeah, I sort of miss it. Quite frankly, it just takes effort to schedule with everyone. Like, because especially I do with like friends and families, people who aren't used to seeing like 2 movies, a day. So I'm like, okay, well, what movie we're going to do this, and organize all this stuff, and it's like, and people, it's time of life stuff. I have a lot of friends in my life who are having kids and stuff. It's totally understandable.
Totally.
So it's anyway. We'll get back into it.
Yeah, I totally get that, and it's interesting. Like, and this isn't. I don't know. I've recently made the choice to do everything I can to do weekly episodes of Obsessive Viewer. Like, that is my goal for the foreseeable future, for as long as I can, do weekly episodes. And that is going to take the form of I'm going to have solo episodes. Like, I did a solo episode for the Marvels and Quiz Lady a couple weeks ago, and I really liked it. It was a good experiment, because I do a lot of solo recordings anyway with Patreon and Anthology. But like, I would say that subconsciously or partially, it's a little bit inspired by you. Because you write for What's Up magazine up there.
Right.
And like, you do weekly reviews there, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I can do weekly reviews on Obsessive Viewer. I can do that. And so if I crash and burn, it's your fault, Brent.
I'll bear the brunt of it.
Yeah.
That's been a really great gig. I've written for them for since 2018.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, that's been one of the really nice things about it is, I almost always don't like what I write, but the idea of just putting out a review every week that runs, it's just like a good sort of like pace and goal. And it's like, I feel like a doable amount. So, it's been great. So yeah,
nice.
I've really enjoyed that.
Very nice. And of course, you post all of those reviews as well on your website, awakeinthedark.com. So check that out, everyone. But like I said, today on the show, we're going to be reviewing Thanksgiving and Please Don't Destroy, the Treasure of Foggy Mountain. I know that last week on the show, I mentioned that the episode was going to be reviewing Thanksgiving and Fingernails. But I decided to make basically what I'm doing, like Brent, you mentioned the IFJA awards and everything. For Patreon Potpourri on my Patreon, I'm doing those 4 movie reviews. That's basically me reviewing movies that I watch for awards consideration in groups of 4. And so I watched Fingernails as part of that, just out of curiosity to see if it was something that I wanted to consider for awards. And I'm wanting to not have overlap with Patreon and the official episode. So that's kind of my line of thinking. That's why I switched it up from Fingernails to Please Don't Destroy. Also, I've been very much looking forward to Please Don't Destroy, the Treasure of Foggy Mountain.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to talk about. But before we do that, Brent, I do have a couple of like light news things that I want to talk to you about just a little bit, just to get it out into the air, I guess. But 2 things happened this week. Both involve a specific actress, incidentally enough. But the Madam Web trailer came out. Yeah. Did you watch that? I know you don't really watch trailers.
I did.
Okay.
I did, because that's one that I don't care about. That whole SSU or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
It's fun. I like to watch them because it's such a strange pocket of the cinematic world right now. So yes, I did watch the Madam Web trailer. Yeah.
What did you think of it?
It looks awful.
Yeah.
So, so it's funny because I watched that and I was like, because Kraven the Hunter got switched around. Wasn't that supposed to come out later this year?
I want to say that it was supposed to come out this year, but maybe because it's all out of whack and everything. And also, like Kraven the Hunter, and this might be something that is going to catch the ire of people, but like, I just don't, like, obviously, I don't care about any of the, like, non-Spider-Man Spider-Man movies that they're doing. It's just, it's been just kind of garbage. Even when it's fun garbage, it's still not great. Yeah, I think it was originally supposed to come out, Kraven the Hunter was originally supposed to come out in August of this year. But I sort of had a weirrt. This was, speaking of what's up, the first Venom movie was one of my first reviews for them. Oh, interesting.
And I gave it a 1 out of 5, which I sort of like, you know, when I saw the movie, I was just like, what is, like, this is so much worse than like the DC stuff, the MCU stuff. I'm just like, what is going on? And so anyway, so I did that, and like Half the Time Murders, so I gave it a 0.5 star out of 5. I think still the only one I've given since I've written for them. And my editor was like, "Hey man, you okay?" And I was like, look, because it was around this time. It was like in October, I think, and I was like, I'll have some others. And I think I reviewed like 8th Grade and gave like 4.5 out of 5, like very close to that. So anyway, but it was just funny pocket of time. So like going back, it's hard. Like I think I rewatched Venom and I'm like, okay, I sort of get it now a little bit. I still don't think it's like an amazing movie. When I watched Let There Be Carnage, I went in with that context and I did have a good time with that one, because I realized that one I think is even campier, if that's even possible, because the first one's pretty darn campy. The first one, I will say, actually tries to take itself a little too seriously. Let There Be Carnage doesn't really even try.
Oh no.
Morbius is just bad, but it is Morbius. It was funny that Sony re-released it thinking that Morbius would work and it didn't, so that's funny. Like any of that. So
Morbius was kind of where I was like, this is kind of just irredeemably bad. Not that it was unwatchable. Like I wouldn't go so far as to say that. There were some decent things about it, but it's just like, this is just not my cup of tea, like at all. It's just not for me. And like Madam Web, I know nothing about the source character. I know nothing about the comic character or anything, but the trailer just did nothing to like inspire any it looked like a mid 2000s like cash in comic book movie, like made in the wake of like X-Men and X2, like that kind of just like
Elektra, sort of giving Elektra sort of
yes. So but now that I'm going weekly with Obsessive Viewer, I'll probably review it.
You'll definitely be reviewing it then. I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be funny. It's hard to know, because like Morbius, I wouldn't recommend that movie. Like, oh, it's so bad it's good. Like, not really. It's not there. We'll see about this one. The memes coming out from this have been really funny about my mom studying spider. There's this, I forget what the exact line is, but there's an exposition dump in the trailer, which you don't always get. That just shows you how much no one knows what Madam Web is about.
Exactly.
But it's like, she talks about her mom studying spiders like in South America or something. And it's so stupid. And the way she says it is so bland.
Yes.
That there have been all these memes about like that line. So anyway.
It's been great. It's been great.
Yeah.
So I will see. But the other news thing that's related somewhat is Sydney Sweeney. The Anyone But You trailer and the Curse trailer shenanigans. Where they did that was so great. For context, there's a link in the show notes for information, but basically Anyone But You, the new rom-com coming out next month, I think, with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. They did a new trailer for it that had the two kind of introducing it and a kind of hokey, awkward, like back and forth thing, and then within 24 hours Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone did a copy, like a parody of that intro for their trailer for The Curse, which was just like chef's kiss. I thought that was great. So what did you make of that?
Nathan Fielder had a whole like screenshot
Yes.
memo. It was like a couple paragraphs that like we didn't know.
We didn't know this is the danger of AI.
Parallel thought. Yeah, all this stuff. So yeah, good on them. I have not watched The Curse yet. It's very up my alley. I just I'm always like this with shows that are weekly, where I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch it weekly or just wait and binge. But this I'll probably do a hybrid. I'll maybe do like 3 episodes at a time or something.
Yeah,
I'm super interested in it. But yeah, I mean, as for anyone but you, did you see that? Like, apparently someone got a photo. Like, Sydney Sweeney was like, after the actors strike, she was like back in Australia doing a reshoot.
Oh,
which I don't know how that makes any sense, because this movie is still slated to come out next month and they're promoting it. So
wow,
I don't understand how it must have only been like one scene, but I think that's crazy.
That's nuts. Yeah. I mean, we're living in a world where whoever directed Cats was able to add stuff when it was in theaters. Right. So
yeah, and take away buttholes. So,
yes, exactly. I'm still very very sore about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Butthurt?
Yeah, I'm butthurt. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the movie is. I don't know. It's such a weird thing with this movie, because what's been the big thing about this movie during the year is like, whatever, is he's engaged or something, and like, you know, there were a lot of rumors that they had like a tryst on set or something, and all this stuff. And then like you watch the trailer and you're like, yeah, they don't have chemistry, which I know is the point of the movie.
Right.
Well, I understand their characters aren't supposed to, but I'm like, do they secretly have a lot of chemistry off screen then?
Yeah, there is a theory that was posited by the sitcom Friends in the 90s, that actors who do not have chemistry on screen it's because they have released that sexual tension off screen.
I see.
That
could be what we're dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get to the bottom of it. We'll figure it out. I've got my team in Australia where they're doing reshoots apparently, so we'll do that.
Yeah. Today.
Yeah. But I, as an unabashed lover of the romantic comedy, I am excited for that movie, just for no other reason than I like the 2 actors, and it's a romantic comedy, and even when they're bad, they're still pretty bad, but it's at least not something that's going to keep me up at night. So
that's literally like all you needed to make like $150 to $200 million domestically back in the 90s. What you just said. Like, I like the 2 actors. They're handsome / gorgeous people. Like, this is that's it. It's all you needed. And now it's a lot it's
Yeah, exactly.
You need to make up on-set trysts and gossip and all that stuff. So yeah.
Oh yeah. So that's all the like news and stuff that I have up top. Do you want to go into our first review of the evening, which is for Eli Roth's Thanksgiving?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So for the listener, we're going to be doing a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler review. To bring us into the spoiler review, I'll play a clip from the trailer. There's timestamps in the show notes, which you can find in your podcast app or at obsessiveviewer.com/OV403. And to bring us into the non-spoiler review, the premise of Thanksgiving, which is currently in theaters, is after a Black Friday riot ends in tragedy, a mysterious Thanksgiving-inspired killer terrorizes Plymouth, Massachusetts, the birthplace of the infamous holiday. Director is Eli Roth. Writers are Jeff Rendell and Eli Roth. And the cast includes Nell Verlacque, Jalen Thomas Brooks, Patrick Dempsey, Addison Rae, and Gina Gershon. So Brent, how did you feel about Thanksgiving? And we should also touch on the fact that this was originally, or it's a weird thing that it was a Grindhouse trailer way back in like 2010 or 2007, I think, and now they finally made the movie. So what was your attitude going into it and your history with Thanksgiving?
Yeah, this is the 3rd movie to be adapted from those Grindhouse trailers, the fake trailers, or the movie. Basically, the fake movie trailers that played in the movie Grindhouse, which, is co-directed by Robert Rodriguez did one section, Quentin Tarantino did the other. And then in between this double feature are these fake trailers, basically. So Rob Zombie did Werewolf Women of the SS, which is this Nazi exploitation thing, and Don't. Edgar Wright directed that, which was a very British horror, like UK 70s horror type of thing. And so Thanksgiving was one of them. Machete was another one that Robert Rodriguez did.
Right.
That became a movie, and then Machete Kills.
Mm-hmm.
Hobo with a Shotgun is not one that I've seen, but that turned into a feature that was apparently in like other international. I haven't seen the trailer or the actual movie. But regardless, Thanksgiving is one of them. It's directed by Eli Roth. It's this 2-minute trailer that's in this movie, and it had always been my favorite of the 4 that are in the U.S. cut of Grindhouse. It is just wonderful. So. It's very Halloween, I would say. Like, it's kind of in that tradition. It has like a really sort of like creepy, like voiceover and everything, but it gets more and more ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, there's all these like characters that get beheaded in ways that make zero sense. There's this ridiculously like over-sexualized / violent trampoline set piece, which they sort of adapt for the movie, which we'll talk about. But it's wonderful. Like it's just very, very funny. It gets the aesthetic right. I had said for a while this was my favorite Eli Roth movie. I remember Mitch in his review, he said that too. And nice. I had actually been thinking that for a while, because I'm not a huge Eli Roth fan.
Honestly, I'm
I've
not
liked some
either.
of his stuff. Yeah, I've liked some of his stuff here and there, but I had said like Thanksgiving, I'm like, in 2-minute spurts, apparently he's perfect, because that was like every shot of that trailer is really, really great. So.
Yes. Like, for me, Eli Roth has always been a little bit, I'm someone who is a little bit reticent when it comes to ultra violence in movies, in terms of horror movies, like splatter gore stuff. So Eli Roth has always kind of like felt a little bit too far past like my threshold. So like I never saw, he did the Green Inferno, right?
Yeah, he did the Green Inferno,
yeah.
Hostel and Hostel Part 2, which, that was, some would maybe say it kind of, torture porn's kind of height was kind of there alongside the Saw movies, kind of going there too. So, probably pushed the U.S. horror scene sort of into that sort of subgenre. Yeah.
So I kind of didn't really, I don't really follow his work or anything that much, but I am just a big fan of slashers, especially this breed of slasher, this kind of like picking them off one by one, ridiculous kill sequences that are over the top. It's all great. So I came of age as a horror fan in the 90s when like Scream just rebooted the slasher subgenre. So I was delighted, not to get into the review yet, because I do have a little piece of trivia, but I was delighted that this is in that similar vein and not in like the grindhousey vein, which is interesting because I read on IMDb, the trivia, it says, in an interview with Total Film Magazine, filmmaker Eli Roth has said this film isn't meant to be the film that was advertised in Grindhouse.
Right.
And he said, quote, we said, let's pretend Thanksgiving was from 1980. That was so offensive that every print was destroyed. All the scripts were burned. The director disappeared. The crew members changed their names. One person saved the trailer and uploaded it to the darkest corners of 4chan, and now it's made it out. So this is a 2023 reboot of that.
Okay.
And then he said, once we said that, it freed us up. So, having said that, how did you feel about Thanksgiving 2023 when you saw it?
Yeah, this wasn't one that I think I saw a trailer for. Well, in a way I did. I didn't see a trailer for the 2023 movie. I saw the one for the one that got burned, all the copies. So I didn't see the one for 2023. It was kind of on my radar. It was one of those things that, again, because Grindhouse came out in 2007, I was just like such a long-waited thing. I'm like, oh, they're finally doing the thing. Yeah. So I was kind of like curious about it. I hadn't really seen a trailer, but the question in my mind was kind of what you just said a minute ago, is like, are they making the movie? Because I was like, that's going to be kind of exhausting.
Yes.
Like the prospect of them turning that grindhouse thing, like doing that sort of like not pastiche, is really just parody of like 70s slashers for like feature length. I was like, it worked in 2 minutes. Don't really know that it would work at feature length, but I was like, that would be interesting to see what they come up with if Sony, you know, decides to put that movie out, I guess. So
yeah,
it was one of those ones I was like, I'll probably see it at some point. But I kind of loved it.
Nice.
I think it's one of my favorite slashers since I kind of had to go back. I think maybe You're Next. Would you consider You're Next a slasher?
Oh, yeah.
It's sort of like, yeah, there's sort of some intersections there. But I think, you know, there's, yeah, anyway, I feel comfortable enough saying that because I really love You're Next. But this was terrific, and it is different than I had expected. It is more of I said that it's sort of like a little more serious. It's not, I mean, compared to the original trailer from Grindhouse, it's still campy, but not in the way, but it still takes the craft seriously.
Yes.
Which I think is the most important. And yeah, it definitely, we'll talk about it. It does definitely give a good amount of scream. I Know What You Did Last Summer is another one I was getting quite a bit, even though that's set in the summer. This is, you know, very much a holiday slasher, but yeah, I mean, we'll talk detailed stuff, but I really loved it and was not even expecting to see it, much less really enjoy it.
Yeah, much less review it or be a guest on a podcast about it. So
I'm doing the full Monty with it. So there you go.
Exactly. I loved this movie. I just saw it this afternoon, and I mean, it was everything that I wanted it to be and was everything that I didn't expect it to be. Because I intentionally didn't go back and rewatch the trailer from Grindhouse, and I didn't know exactly what the vibe of it was. I was a little bit nervous that it would be ultra gory, over the top, splatterfest stuff. But what I kind of wasn't expecting was this very, not too serious, but very not even self-aware, but it's a slasher movie that harkens back to that 90s era slasher. Like you said, I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream feel very much like influences on this movie, and I kind of love it because that's what you need this type of movie to be, because it is a holiday set slasher film. So obviously it's going to take some hallmarks from Halloween, but it's also Thanksgiving. It's an unassuming holiday, sort of. But I think built into it, just the fact that it's fall in New England, and it has that history, and the fact that so much of the violence is centered around the food and how it's prepared and stuff that's just kind of just really clever in terms of just appropriating this holiday into a slasher thing without it being just a knockoff or parody of Halloween. So I don't know, I really loved it. And it felt even though there were some issues I had here and there, but even though it has this this very over the top spurts of violence here and there that are designed to be shocking in the way that, at least in my messed up brain, I'm just cackling at it. I'm cackling at the ridiculousness of the violence and everything. But even though it is built that way into a somewhat campy kind of spurts of violence aesthetic, it takes itself serious enough. It takes the lore that it's purporting serious enough. And I just really liked that balance to the movie. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I think this, more than any other movie I've seen of his, really makes me realize that Eli Roth is a real student of these films.
Yes.
And I think that's something that, for me, has just sort of been missing, quite frankly, in his other work. Even stuff like you mentioned, The Green Inferno or Knock Knock, there, you can see, I don't know, there's something about it here that really hits, that I was struggling to kind of figure out how and why when I was writing about this. Why is this the one that really works? I mean, it could be that, it had just been a project that he had been working on for a while. I mean, that could be part of it. That he just spent a lot of time with it. I think he had mentioned when he had made I believe the co-writer for this movie, Jeff Rendell, is the one who plays the pilgrim killer in the Thanksgiving trailer. So he talked about, I think in some interview or something, about the two of them, how after Silent Night, Deadly Night, they were like the idea, like a Halloween or a holiday slasher rather. That's kind of what, inspired them for Thanksgiving. But they said that they talked about that like a lot as like kids or whatever. So it could be like a super bad situation where maybe these guys just had this really great cooker of a movie, and they had all this, so to speak, and they had all of these like really cool ideas throughout the years. And I think they kind of just threw them all in here. And I mean, I have to say too, like, good on Sony. Like, how many bad Sony horror movies have there been? That was another reason I was going into this, and I was like, there's 3 other movies coming out this weekend. It's after Halloween, which I understand it works for the Thanksgiving theme, but it's kind of like, are people still going to want to watch horror movies? I don't really know. Yeah. But it seems like, I mean, and this isn't like a wild, crazy movie or anything, but I feel like, good on him for sticking with them and everything, because I think he knew what he was doing on this one. So I hope it does well.
Yeah, me too. I could see this being, and this is I mean, this is maybe me, I don't know if this is necessarily a reflection of like the themes that it explores and how I'm not like getting it, but like in terms of like consumerism and capitalism and stuff, like I'm like, I want to see a full franchise. I want to see multiple Thanksgiving movies. I want there to be just all of these. I want it to get the Halloween treatment, but with better installments in the subsequent movies. So yeah. Having said that, I hope it does well too. And we're gonna do our part to get the word out.
It's funny because you mentioned that people were talking about it franchising. There actually is Into the Dark. Did you ever talk about that? I don't know about on your podcast or if people ever watched them.
I so there saw is like the first episode.
Yeah, there are a couple Thanksgiving themed one. One is one with not Dermot Mulroney. Diana Silvers is in it. It's like a mom's, or it's a daughter stepdad sort of like like a 90s thriller sort of thing. That one's pretty decent. But there's another one called Pilgrim that they did that's actually quite good. Yeah. And there are echoes of this movie. I don't think they're related, and they aren't related at all. But that one was actually one of the better ones, if not the best one.
Nice.
Pretty hit and miss show. I think there were about 25 episodes on Hulu. But there was a little bit in this movie where I was like, oh yeah, didn't they do a Pilgrim one and Into the Dark? That was a good one. So anyway,
I remember, and this is a tangent, but Into the Dark, I kind of forgot that existed. And when it first came out, for context, if you don't know, Into the Dark was a monthly installment of like feature length episodes on Hulu that each month was centered around a specific holiday. So like, I think the only one that I saw was called The Body, and it was, I think it was a Halloween episode where it was like a hitman has to dispose of a body, and he kind of gets in with a group of people that are out like on a bar crawl or something like that.
People think he's dressed up as an assassin.
Yes.
So like that's the twist on it, is that it's take place during Halloween. So he's kind of able to get away with this stuff. But
yeah. So that's something I never really went back and revisited. It was a Blumhouse production, I believe.
That second one is the one with some actor who's not Dermot Mulroney and Diana Silvers. And that one's actually pretty good. Like, especially if you like that sort of like, it's more of it's horror, I guess, but it's kind of more of like a 90s thriller, I feel like. That one's pretty solid, and that is technically the Thanksgiving themed one, and then there's a Christmas one, New Year's, blah, blah, blah. It's one of those shows so what happened with that, I think, I don't really know. They probably should have just had it be essentially a limited series where they did 12 of them. Yeah. But they tried to do a second season, but then I don't think even COVID affected it, but that second season is really strung out. So it's kind of weird, but that episode that I'm talking about, Pilgrim, is in the second season. Okay. And there were some episodes around it that are like either terrible or fine. Yeah. But that one was actually pretty solid. It had to do with basically they were doing, sort of, I think it might have been set in Plymouth, but I think they were people kind of trying to recreate the first Thanksgiving, and then it turns into a home invasion movie, and then it gets even weirder from that. Definitely echoes of Mother for sure.
Okay. So, that's interesting.
Different than this movie, the Eli Roth Thanksgiving, for sure.
Right.
But so set around.
Okay. And that was Dermot Mulroney in the second episode.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
I know my silver foxes, apparently.
There you go. So back to Thanksgiving. The movie is like, how did you feel about? I had no transition, by the way. I had no idea. So I'm like very much not sure where I'm going with this. But what were in terms of the violence and stuff? How did you feel about the depiction of violence in relation to the overall tone of the movie? And it's kind of funny that, like, I've had you on the show for The Exorcist Believer, and then also Halloween Ends you were on for, and then so I don't know, but
Halloween Kills as well, I think, but I'm not sure.
Maybe. I think so, yeah. Probably. But yeah, so how did you feel about the actual, like, violence and slasher elements of this movie?
I did have that in mind before we talked about doing this, because I was like, I need to redeem myself. I like horror movies when they're good. Yes. I like slashers when they're good. I know there are a lot of people that like all three of the David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy, the sequels. I'm just not one of them, and that's fine. Yeah. But yeah, I do love Thanksgiving. In terms of the horror, or in terms of the violence rather, again, this is the sort of thing where, I mean, all slashers are campy, to a degree, right? Like, the Halloween movies, certainly Friday the 13th, definitely. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street goes into straight, comedy at some points. So again, I mean, I think he's able to kind of get all of the things, sort of set up for that, so that it's like, like the corncob forks are put to good use. There's a really there's a really great bit with a pop-up turkey timer that's wonderful. That's a little, just sort of little coda on the end of a kill. And that's the funny thing. It's so funny because watching this movie, I don't want to say I didn't think like Eli Roth directed this, but the stuff that was kind of the more like torture-y side of things, it didn't bother me as much, because again, I think there was just kind of such craft to it. And looking back on, I could see, and we're in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty like extreme. Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe it's because the context is different. There's something different with the characters. This is one of those great slashers where kind of all the characters are off. That's why I like that too. It's like, I mean, the main character, Jessica, she's like a great final girl. Like, they do a good job with her. And it's not that the characters are bad, but they're all kind of just generally not the best people. And that, you know, that's why for slashers, for me, it's like, that's okay. Cause like, you kind of have to think that all of them, I put this in my review, a slasher kind of necessitates that you think that all of the people could either be, anyone at any point could potentially be killed or unspeakably evil. Yes. Meaning the killer, so it's like, if you do that, you can't have a ton of characters that you have a ton of empathy for, because the movie doesn't really work. So that's what I like about this movie, is that the characters were, I thought the characters and the actors and everything, it was enjoyable, but it also wasn't like, oh, I never want to leave these people. It also helps that the kind of tone of the characters, in terms of like the kind of friend group at the center of it, they're all like, they're teenagers, they're teenage assholes basically. And there's a lot of like, there's a nice bit of like testosterone running and a lot of just like, it's very reflective of how teenagers think they're invincible. And it just feels like, here's the thing, and this is going to be a cheap shot, but I really, really wish that this movie existed so that someone could show Rob Zombie that before he made his 2 train wreck Halloween movies, because that was one of the biggest sticking points for me with those movies. But anyway, the
like, you don't need to have empathy for the characters, and they're just like a shade shy of being just caricatures. And I think that that's a very, very intentional and well done kind of dynamic to bring to the table, because it's like you still sympathize with them, you're still interested in them, and you're still rooting for them, but they're also in this heightened environment where like they can almost be campy but not fully campy. I don't know. It was a really good balance.
And this is one of those things, like the kind of carryovers from the trailer. They don't have, of course, like exact characters, but like in the trailer there's kind of like the jock, and it's very like, it's almost like 50s in a way, it's all Pleasantville, where it's like, cool it, Judy, you're with me, you know. And that sort of thing. And they're out in the woods. You have that, and then you have again, like the horny cheerleader on the trampoline sort of thing, right? So they actually work that sort of stuff in this movie, and it still kind of works, even though it's not the 70s aesthetic of like the Grindhouse trailer. It's kind of going more towards like the 90s thing. Who knows? Maybe these are just circles we will run around forever. who can say? I liked the way, I don't know if the trampoline thing, if we should talk about that specifically, but I like that he tried to include that. He like included that in the movie. It's different. I mean, it's quote unquote better, I guess, in the trailer. But I like him trying to actually include some DNA from that trailer, even though this movie is a different thing. It's its own thing.
Absolutely. Do you want to go into spoilers?
It's a slasher, so we better talk about who gets it.
Yeah, exactly.
Who did all of it. Yeah.
Yes. So we're going to go into spoilers for Thanksgiving. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. If you want to skip spoilers and go to our Please Don't Destroy review, check the show notes for timestamps to skip around. Again, that's at obsessiveviewer.com/OV403 or in the notes section of your podcast app that you're listening to this on. So I'm going to play a clip from the trailer, and when we come back, we're going to be spoiling Thanksgiving.
I used to love this town. Until what happened that night. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and I'm tired of pretending like everything is normal when it's not.
I want things to go back to normal, too.
Show some enthusiasm. Thanksgiving is an institution here.
Okay, so spoilers on for Thanksgiving. And Brent, something that I didn't really touch on in the non-spoiler thing, which I probably could have when we were talking non-spoilers, but a couple of things that kind of didn't necessarily detract from the movie for me, but a couple of things that kind of felt a little bit like a little bit not to my liking was, while I like the backstory, like that whole prologue of the Black Friday trampling of the people and the riot basically that breaks out, as awesome and as crazy as that gets and insane and campy and over the top, I do feel like that prologue was way too long. Like it felt like it was just there was just way too much time spent building toward like the cut to a year later. And similar to that, I feel like the final girl of the movie, Jess, I feel like she isn't as prominent as the final girl until like maybe well over halfway through the movie. And I kind of wanted, and this might be more nitpicking than anything, but I kind of wish that, you know, she had like an encounter with John Carver earlier in the movie rather than so late in the movie where she's in the school. So a couple minor issues there. Did that resonate with you at all, or did you have any similar feelings?
So not seeing the trailer, I didn't know that I didn't know that it was going to have the Right Mart thing and then the year later. Okay. So actually not knowing that, I think helped me, because if it had just gone into everything like in the right, I don't know, like it would have just been structured differently. Yeah. But I kind of enjoyed that. And I liked that as a setup. So yeah, it actually worked for me. I mean, look, this isn't like PhD level, capitalists,
Right.
satire or anything. This is, but it works for the movie. And again, this is another one. Like, I like that it actually makes Thanksgiving a part of this. Like, it's not just like a Christmas movie where someone's going to get stabbed with a candy cane. It's like a little more into that. It actually delves into like, okay, well, that ties into Black Friday, and it is disgusting. Like, it is horror. It is terrible. Like, we see more and more of that. People are getting more uncivilized, in public places. And, so I'm not going to act like, oh my God, this is so a 200 IQ, social commentary,
Right.
but it worked for me because it's, it ties in with a Thanksgiving thing, and it's true. Like, people go insane. It's what's funny about it is that it does get over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's scalp gets ripped off with it with the wheel of a shopping cart. So I mean, it's gonna go there. But I mean, the first death I think that we see kind of is someone basically get crushed under a door.
Yeah.
I think it's the doorman, and like, that is, again, because I didn't know that this was prologue, that you have a slasher movie where the first person who dies is not only by the hand of bystanders, people rushing in, but it is brutal in its own way. Like, that's probably to me, it was like the most brutal death, because like, the guy didn't deserve it. He didn't have it coming. Right. And it's not, the killer. It's these people who are terrible, behaving horribly. So that was, to me, like, in the first 10 minutes, I was like, okay, like, again, I'm not going to act like this is the like smartest movie of all time, but it's more than I expected. Like, it's better than I expected that they're going to, try to evoke this craziness, of what, waffle irons do to people.
Yeah. And to be clear, I loved that aspect of it. It felt like the whole prologue went on way too long, but I do understand that they need to set up the characters, they need to set up the dynamics and everything, especially with the reveal at the end, with the sheriff being the killer and everything, and having that backstory kind of like that motive being kind of hinted at in the movie. In the prologue,
there are also a ton of characters in this movie too.
Exactly.
There's so many characters introduced in the first 15 minutes, where I will agree with your second point to a degree, because I was like, who's gonna be like, are we gonna have like a protagonist in this movie? Because there almost isn't for like the first half.
Right.
It's really
just, weird. Yeah, they're not like, I'm gonna bring in my love of Scream, but with like in the first Scream movie, like, it's very clear, like, Sidney Prescott is the final girl. Right. She's the one that's being taunted. She's the one that's being hunted by Ghostface. And granted, that has all of this other stuff to it, that it's all based on like her history and her family, and the motive is tied to her. So with this movie, with Thanksgiving, I guess I don't necessarily need Jess to be the focal, like, final girl of it. I just kind of wish that her kind of becoming the final girl wasn't something that felt like it was, felt that it was just like, okay, she's the only one left, basically, or she's like the only one in a position to do something.
Well, I thought that like it could be Gabby at a certain point, played by Addison Rae. Like, I just didn't know, and there is a love triangle set up with with Jess and everything. So I guess that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little messy there. But when it comes into focus, in terms of like her character, I dug that. I thought I hadn't seen her in anything else. No, for
me neither.
Verloc, we'll say.
Yeah.
I thought she was wonderful. I mean, she's had that look to her. She has like sort of a wholesome, like wide-eyed look, but she's very smart, and she is able to evade, John Carver. I didn't know if John Carver was like kind of like a John Carpenter. I didn't really know what they were. Either way, of course, it works because Carver, and again, they get all the Thanksgiving stuff. They just get really right. I mean, they go for it with
agree.
That. With that turkey scene, that was the one I was referring to, like, like someone being burned alive with like a window that the person can see through. Like, of course, that's horrifying.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that's terrible.
Absolutely terrifying.
But it sort of works. And then you get the pop-up timer and you're like,
I mean,
it's pretty good.
It is perfect. Like, that's the thing that, like you said, that it's clear that Eli Roth is a student of the genre. He is someone who knows what he's doing. So, like, even if I am terrified to watch some of his more, like, extreme movies, or I'm not into that, I'm aware that he knows what he's doing. He's someone who is he's someone who's thorough with it. So when you have like this, which the premise alone is like the entire point of the trailer in Grindhouse was to have like a kind of parody of like Halloween. And here, like, the commitment to all of the Thanksgiving stuff, the town, the community aspect of it, that's fantastic. And I love how it's just naturally like evocative of obviously autumn. Like it's a clean like transition from like Halloween to Thanksgiving. Like Thanksgiving can be a horror holiday too. From the overall.
That was one of the
look.
What you just said was one of the things that went through my mind. Like, how is this like the first true Thanksgiving horror movie?
Yeah,
because it's sort of right there. Like there's, and I think it's because you sort of go into it with a goof, but then you work on it and you're like, there's kind of a lot of stuff here. It's still autumn. It's that weird time where it's like, it's darker. It's not Christmas yet. People aren't, bright and cheery yet, which there's a whole Christmas slasher subgenre. That's a subgenre, I guess you could say, of horror. But
even in theaters now,
so that has its thing,
Even in theaters now, they have It's a Wonderful Knife, which is out, which I haven't seen.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's going to be on Shudder December 1st.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'll check that out.
Okay.
But regardless, it's just like, they get all of that stuff. The pilgrim outfit. There's a really, really, it's just like so stupid. I have seen that Grindhouse trailer a number of times. There's a scene that's in the movie where the turkey is in their town parade, and then although they do a few really cool subversions of that in the movie, but he gets his head cut off. Now in the trailer, he runs around and is so it's like a turkey with his head cut off, right? So before he falls, and it's that trailer is all about heads rolling. It's a lot of beheadings. They do the turkey getting its head cut off, but they don't show him running around because it's not that kind of movie. It's they're gonna do that. They're gonna do the mascot getting beheaded, but they're not gonna go the extra step. And I don't know, again, watching this movie, that's where I really appreciated like kind of how they took little things from the trailer, but they sort of changed the tone of it.
Yes.
So the trampoline bit, my understanding is Grindhouse was really close to an NC-17 rating because of that trailer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because of the trampoline, the knife into the, hoo-ha. And they had to add, not that I'm a perv and would do anything like, slow down frames or anything, but they do sort of film burn, celluloid burn, like cigarette burns, like, sort of around. So you don't like really, and it's such a quick cut, so to speak, that, so I think with this movie, they're like, we can't do that.
Right.
Like they probably didn't want to like risk it or anything. So they do change it. And I don't think she takes her top off in this movie, which is whatever. That's totally fine. Do whatever you want. Yeah. But they still do the trampoline kill. And it's kind of like more visceral in this one, if that's even possible, because he stabs her like several times.
Yeah.
Even though the way it happens in the trailer would be awful too. But so again, it's different, and that's a cool way of sort of subverting. I mean, for weirdos like me who have seen that trailer once, it's subverting things. For other people to just be like, "Oh, she got stabbed on the trampoline. That's horrifying too." So, anyway.
Right. The gore. It is such a fun thing, and that's kind of what I was getting at with talking about him knowing what the kind of movie that he's making, because obviously horror is very like it's a very wide genre. Like there are so many different points on the horror spectrum that a movie can be, but here it is a movie that's aware enough to know that horror and comedy are very close together, and like having it not be necessarily like an outright like hilarious movie or anything, but like having the foreknowledge to know that the audience is going to have like a shocked cackling response, at least on my part, to like just the violence and everything. I think to like in comparison, like the movie Talk to Me, when I saw that in the theater, I was like, that was tense. That was incredibly intense, and like this is just a completely different type of horror movie, which I really appreciated.
This is not elevated horror.
No,
this is, I mean, and that's great. Like that, we need all kinds, right?
Yes.
So, so like the first kill, with John Carver, right? So the waitress in there, and that was so. We just kind of going back to the encyclopedic, knowledge of all the horrible deaths we've seen on the screen. Yep. When he first puts her head in whatever liquid it is, I'm like, oh, are we doing like a vat, or are we doing like the Jason X thing where it's nitrogen or whatever? It's just water, but he opens up the freezer door and slams her cheek up against it so she can't move. And I'm just like, great. I don't know that I've seen that before. Like, that's cool. Like, and it tells you, I kind of like how much you kind of get to. I'm stupid and I didn't guess who the killer was. I kind of didn't really. It's not that I didn't care. It's that I wasn't thinking about it.
Same
in
here.
Slashers that are kind of subpar, I'm kind of like, that's the only thing that I care about is who's at it. I don't know. I was so wrapped up in this movie, whatever. But I like the little bits we get about John Carver. Like that to me says, like, of course he wants this waitress to suffer. There's the second kill, since we're in spoilers. He does the electric knife, which is wonderful. Another Thanksgiving thing. But the cat, he looks at the cat and I'm like, don't you freaking do it.
I know.
And he does it.
Terrified.
He feeds the cat, gives it a little pet, and then walks out. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, yeah.
And while like in the background of that, as he's walking to the door, you just see the blood just pouring out of the security guard's like wound, like the stump, I guess. Which also, by the way, I laughed almost probably obnoxiously loud at the line that the security guard says, where he says, "I'm a security guard. I kill people every day."
Yeah, right.
Like that for me personally, because for 10 years in my 20s, I was a security guard, and I was like, that is.
See, you felt
perfect.
seen there as someone.
I felt seen.
You also killed people every day.
I did.
I have to ask you. I'm sorry. I have to ask you about a really, really stupid micro thing right before that line. It might be during that line. So, I don't know if this is in there intentionally, and it's so slight. It's so stupid. But he does the double door thing that Neve Campbell's character, that Sydney does in Scream, to not let her dad in. Is that in Scream?
Oh yeah, it is.
You know how she like props the other door,
props
like her
it
closet
so that
door
it won't
against
open.
The front one. Yeah, against her bedroom door. He does that sort of thing. Like he sort of shuffles the two doors. It's probably just a totally different set design thing that's not even related to that. But that was one thing, because I was already thinking about Scream.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, is that a really small homage to it? Probably.
That's interesting. I kind of wonder, because also the cat's name is Dewey. And I wonder if that's also a reference too.
That probably is, almost certainly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not put that together. Yeah,
it's not even to his front door though. It's probably just an errant, set design thing. But I was looking for it. I guess I was looking for it. I was primed for it.
Yeah, but I was very glad that the cat survived. And it just plays into the humor of it all, where it's like you said, you see like a different side of John Carver, because like the cat wasn't there. I sort of like
that. I like the little moments, because that's sort of the thing I run into with, let's say, like Friday the 13th, right? So like, Jason is not about a personality,
right?
Really, it's more about what is the filmmaker going to bring, that'll make it sort of fun. So yeah, I like the bits of personality that we get of him. And yeah, we're in spoilers. It makes total sense that it would be Patrick Dempsey. I mean, it makes
absolutely.
really no sense that it would be anyone else.
Right. But yeah, you know. Like it's interesting because, like I said, this movie does feel very much inspired by like 90s, like late 90s slashers like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Definitely I Know What You Did Last Summer, especially like obviously it's the, you know, going back and like getting revenge on people that harmed people that you loved a year ago in the past. Obviously that's very much I Know What You Did Last Summer, but also just like the parade sequence was like, I was like, oh, that just reminded me so much of that. But like with those slashers, those were all good whodunits, and like that was a big part of it. And here I was, and maybe this is more just me, just like not really wanting to deconstruct the fun that I'm having, but like I wasn't like looking at who could it be. Like I thought, okay, well maybe it's Ryan, maybe it's Bobby. And then like I was thinking like, okay, well it could be Mitch.
Could be more than one of them.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. And I was like, maybe it could be Mitch because he was very upset, but it's also like, that's laying it on a little thick, which I think is really clever the way that they do that, because he is tied to it because Patrick Dempsey's character was having an affair with his wife and like all that. But it wasn't until Jess finds Patrick Dempsey on the ground that I was like, oh, it's him. Like, it's him. We didn't see him get harmed. We didn't see him do anything. It's clearly him. And there was a brief moment where I thought, like, okay, maybe he and Bobby are in cahoots, but yeah. But how did you feel about that?
I think when you see Bobby, then I was like, okay, it's probably both of them. It's like, okay, well, it's just Patrick.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. Up to that point of him being, you know, quote unquote ambushed, you know, and all that stuff, I kind of lost track of it. Like I didn't, it's not I didn't care because I wasn't in the movie. It was just, I didn't care. You're right about the whodunit aspect. You mentioned like 90s movies and Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. That parade sequence turns from I Know What You Did Last Summer to like Heat. In like a minute. Because there's, you know, flashbangs, there's I mean really more like Dark Knight.
I was gonna say the Dark Knight
and all that. You know, and you're getting all that stuff. And again, it's just like, why does this work? It just works. Like there's just there, and that was a subversion of sort of what they did like in the trailer. Like you think that you even see the shot of John Carver like in one of the stores and him walking out, but that doesn't end up being, and that's kind of where I was thinking like, oh, it could be two killers, but apparently it's just the one.
It's
just Patrick Dempsey, who Patrick Dempsey, the actor, just was awarded Sexiest Man Alive.
Sexiest Man Alive, yeah. It, you know, and he fought a tough competition, and I was willing to concede and everything. It's fine.
He called you personally, or you called him.
He did, yeah.
Listen,
it's like, hey,
it's been an honor.
Congrats. You know, I think
this movie is a wonderful victory lap, though, because. You know, again, apparently silver foxes. I apparently know what I'm talking about in this area. But his victory lap is he gets like the only really egregious New England accent in this, which I'd say somehow makes him even a little bit sexier. And then he's a killer is maybe, some people are into that. So,
you know, here's the thing. I can fix him. And
Yeah.
The big like banquet scene. I love that this movie is centered around the Thanksgiving holiday, and they go full bore into it. They do like a whole like Texas Chainsaw style like seat at the table thing, and like that's extreme and cool and interesting and wild. Yeah, I don't know. I really like that. How did you like the finale, that portion of it?
I liked it a lot. And again, that's another aspect of it that couldn't have been done in the 70s or the 90s with the way they tease it with Instagram.
Yes.
This isn't a movie that like evokes technology in a lot of different ways, but the way that, you know, he basically gets on Instagram, there's a scene where he's able to basically send the cops in a totally other direction because of a live stream. So I sort of like them setting that up because, again, even though this harkens back to old slashers, that's kind of a more, it's what you get more in like a Scream 5 or 6, really. Yeah. So I did like that. I like that it, called back to the original trailer. It goes there with the whole Kathleen, I think her name is, that whatever, being the turkey, and he actually carves some of her skin and all that. The corkscrew on the neck and doing some wine there. Again, I was like, they must have been workshopping how many different Thanksgiving things can we put in this movie, and they do all of them.
It is insane. It's packed so well with that, and like with the blood as wine thing. Just I love the comedy of that, where he's just like, you're gonna want to let that breathe. It's so
Absolutely.
Great. And that also makes
you want a killer who's enjoying their work.
Exactly. And like that, I mean, the whole getup it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous Thanksgiving stuff, the mask and the pilgrim hat, all that is just ridiculous. But here's the thing. So like you said, they poured everything they could into this in terms of all of the Thanksgiving accoutrement. And what I'm kind of concerned about, as someone who wants to see a franchise, wants to see multiple movies, is like, what can they do next? Like, what can they do as an escalation? Because I feel like they intentionally leave it on a note that, again, I know what you did last summer end, but they leave it on a note that's like, okay, well, we have revealed who John Carver is. We have him explode or burn up, but maybe this could be a transition into a yearly, maybe not yearly, but a slasher franchise where it is like a supernatural entity. But I just wonder like how they can mine more Thanksgiving stuff into the mix. But
we'd kind of have to see where Patrick Dempsey is in his career, because I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is such a, and that's the thing. I mean, there's not really a ton of big names. I think everyone who's in this does a great job, but there's not. I guess I don't know what it takes for a slasher franchise to really get off the ground.
Yeah.
So
money. That is about it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that is literally it. We're gonna have to see, what kind of feast, what kind of cornucopia is kind of brought to this movie this weekend. Because
exactly,
I mean, you're right. That is ultimately what makes slashers survive: is low budgets and high profits. So that's probably ultimately going to be, what's ultimately going to do it. Crowded weekend. I really don't. So I don't know what people were seeing. I know it was a Trolls movie. I don't know.
Yeah, Trolls, the new Hunger Games.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I don't know, and obviously
this came down to Friday for me. It was a couple days ago, and I was like, kind of waiting to see if I was going to get Saltburn early. That didn't happen, so I was like, I am not spending 2 hours and 45 minutes watching a Hunger Games prequel.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend an hour and a half even watching a Troll sequel. I had already reviewed Next Goal Wins, which I didn't really care for.
Oh yeah.
So it's weird that it came down to that, but I'm like, okay, I'll go to Thanksgiving. But man, I'm happy I had a seat at the table, because it was
nice.
It was really terrific. And another one of those ones too, that I think that's why people sort of like, why Into the Dark kind of came about. Like, I think people like traditions in general culturally, but I think when it comes to horror stuff, like, this is one of those ones that I can absolutely see people revisiting every year. Like, I'm planning on it.
Oh, me too.
Because it's just one of those ones where it's like, and similar to like, holiday horror, like Christmas, like Nightmare Before Christmas, or I know for some people, Black Christmas, or I know Silent Night, Deadly Night, or those are, I don't know how revered those actually are. I know those spawned a lot of sequels. But regardless, like, this is one of those ones too, that even if people don't catch it in theaters, and sadly, unfortunately, if there's not a whole franchise, we'll always have this one. So
Absolutely.
that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was a huge fan of it. I ended up rating it 4.5 stars out of 5. I loved it. I really did. So, I was texting with Mike, co-host who's on sabbatical from the podcast, is what we used to call him. He's has a life and everything, but, he's like my go-to, like, horror person. He loves horror and everything. So like, I had texted him and I was like, this year for my top 10, it is going to be a very, very horror-centric top 10. And like, that's something that is irregular for me these days. But like, I mean, we've got Talk to Me, Thanksgiving is going to be on there. Scream 6 might be, probably will be. When Evil Lurks. Like, I mean, these are all like really, really well done horror movies, in my opinion. So it's been a good year for horror. Yeah, I liked. Is it when Evil Lurks? When Evil Lurks. Yeah,
I always keep thinking like Where Eagles Dare.
Oh, yeah.
You know, which is the closing credits movie to this, the Thanksgiving closing song, and I keep always a When Evil or Where. Anyway,
When
it doesn't matter.
Lurks.
That movie,
yeah,
there's some brutal kills in that one.
Oh,
for
it's
sure.
excellent.
I did like Scream 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Talk to Me. I'm still like, you know, I tried. I watched it again.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's okay.
That's fair.
I mean, hey, it's A24 horror. Like it should be up my alley, right? Like I feel like I'm the weird one.
Yeah. It's
so
like that. Yeah.
Somehow.
It's like that TikTok that I sent that was like the guy, Chris Little, I think is his name, where he's just like, oh yeah, I like A24, like elevated horror, but it's about grief. It's grief. It's about grief.
What's the fake one he says? Thou art doth?
Something like that.
That's an amazing one.
It's so good. So good. Yeah. I'll dig that up and put a link to it in the show notes. Of course,
please do. Yeah. Those sketches you've sent of that TikTok guy or whoever are very funny.
He's fantastic. But yeah, so that should just about do it for our review of Thanksgiving. Brent, do you have any other thoughts on it before we go into our second review? I don't know, like
I give 4 out of 5, which sounds low for how much I've been sort of like, you know, praising it. It's still like, you know, it's still a slasher genre is still one that I have kind of admittedly a low ceiling for.
Sure.
But this is definitely one of the better ones like I've seen in a long time. And I think at this point, I don't think about it, it's probably my favorite horror movie of the year.
Nice.
I don't think it'll be like in my top 10, but
sure.
Almost certainly be like in my top 25.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. And I should say with the caveat that it could be in my top 10, will likely be in my top 10, but
it's gonna be a long 6 weeks, man.
That's the thing. We're in award season, we're getting screeners, like it's like I saw the trailer for Ferrari and I was like, I can't wait for the neon ones. So anyway,
Matt Litch was on Twitter talking about how that's his Thanksgiving prayer is that the neon Bible arrives before Thanksgiving, which we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get it, but it's a busy time of
neon.
Year. Exactly. Yes. All right, that is our review of Thanksgiving. It is currently in theaters. Brent rated it 4 stars. I rated it 4.5 stars. Check like Letterboxd and everything. Let's go into our second review of the night. We're gonna do a probably somewhat brief. We can keep it to non-spoilers, I guess. That's kind of been what I've been doing with the secondary reviews, but we'll do a non-spoiler review for Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain, which is currently streaming on Peacock, and I'm going to play a clip from the trailer to bring us into that non-spoiler review.
What the hell were you doing? You're 3 hours late!
Dad, you don't understand. The car was busted, so we had to shred.
Why are your lips red? Were you eating a snow cone?
That's a really good guess.
What kind of adults rollerblade?
The police are here, and they're saying that you bought alcohol for minors.
Thanks, boys!
In Europe, the drinking age is like 10.
They could have been European.
What made you think they were European?
They had a certain je ne sais quoi.
I think one of them was eating pain au chocolat.
Guys, everyone thinks we're losers, but that's about to change.
Okay, so Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain. The premise, according to IMDb, is it follows 3 friends who live together. When they realize that they don't like their life trajectory, they set off to find a gold treasure that is rumored to be buried in the nearby mountain. Director for this movie was Pale Briganti. Writers and stars of it are Martin Herlihy, John Higgins, and Ben Marshall. These guys they comprise of Please Don't Destroy, a comedy group that is very prolific on SNL with segments on SNL. I became aware of them in late 2020 or early 2021, when I just happened upon a TikTok of Ben Marshall's where it was them doing a vaccine bit where like I talked about it on the podcast at some point or maybe in Patreon, but like the bit was hilarious. Like in that TikTok, that sketch, Ben comes home and the other guys are sitting there and he's just like, "Hey, I got the vaccine." And like, "Yeah, the summer's going to be great." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, what did you get? Did you get Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer?" And he's like, "Oh, I got the Doombreaka." And then he just starts telling like what it was like, "Yeah, they took like a pint of my blood and, you know, they kept saying like Doombreaka. And like, it was like a ritualistic thing. It's hilarious. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes and everything. But anyway, that's when I became aware of them. So when I found out that they were going to be having a movie out this year, I was very excited about it, and I was very excited to watch Please Don't Destroy, which, again, is streaming on Peacock. Brent, how did you feel about Please Don't Destroy, The Treasure of Foggy Mountain, and what is your history with this group of young lads that make the funnies?
Yeah, I became aware of them on SNL. I think the first bit I remember them doing was one about hard seltzer. Okay. And they had all of these different brands of hard seltzer that were increasingly absurd and improbable. And I thought it was really, really funny. And so they've come out with a number one since then. I think their most popular one is probably Three Sad Virgins. I think that's kind of their dick in a box. And which, you know, Taylor Swift guested on. So I think that's since Taylor Swift's on, it's probably their most popular thing. Yeah. I think we just say that. But they've done plenty of other ones, and really, really funny guys. Mm-hmm. I went into this thinking, I guess I was thinking more of Game Over Man, which is the one that Workaholics guys did for Netflix that was awful. Yes. As opposed to something like Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping, mm-hmm. which is the one that Lonely Island did, who are, of course, Lonely Island, also SNL guys. That was such a sort of like heightened thing in terms of like Popstar, in terms of what that movie's doing. Mm-hmm. This is the the Please Don't Destroy movie is lower stakes in terms of like they're doing a Goonies riff, and like that's about what it has going for it in terms of conceptualization. So that's all fine. Having said that, liked it a whole lot. Nice. made me laugh a whole lot. These guys are just really funny, just wonderful chemistry. Mm-hmm. It reminded me, it was like what a Workaholics movie probably should have been, mm-hmm. like, quite honestly. I think they tap into definitely some hot rodness to this. I would say that was one that is technically not like a Lonely Island movie, even though it kind of is. Because, right. Yorma and Akiva are like, mm-hmm. In that movie, worked on it or whatever. Funny. I don't know. It's one of those movies that's not, I mean, either it makes you laugh or not, and it made me laugh. They come up with funny voices and characters. Mm-hmm. There is a repressed character in one of them named Lawrence, mm-hmm. Who may or may not come out later in the movie, who's just a goofball. Yeah. Martin was probably, he's the one that's Lawrence. He was probably my mm-hmm. favorite. There's a bit early on where he has to raise his voice over something. They work in a Cabela's type shop, mm-hmm. Like a Bath Pro Shop sort of thing. That one of them that Ben is trying to inherit from Conan O'Brien, his dad, which they did get that casting spot on. That was great. But Martin's like, he's raising his voice and he's talking about whatever mm-hmm. certain his sexual relationship with his girlfriend and how it goes. And it's not just him raising his voice like his normal mm-hmm. character would, but he does this other thing with it that is so goofy and ridiculous, and his whole attitude about the whole thing, that this is like 10 minutes in, and I was like, okay, well, we're in good hands. Yeah. So. That part in particular was pretty good, because you're expecting one thing from it. You're expecting it to go the cliched route of like someone yelling personal information, but it just keeps going. And it is something that is just, the comedy is in what he's saying and like the normalcy of the conversation. Like the attitude of it, like the thing that makes it funny is that he's yelling over a loud sound.
and it's not so much I don't know, it's very, very well constructed. And for me, I really enjoyed the movie. I ended up rating it 3.5 stars, if that matters to anyone. But it's interesting. I know that the correlation between Please Don't Destroy and Lonely Island is there, and that's a very strong thing. It was interesting because I kind of connected it more to Derek Comedy's Mystery Team. Did you ever see that with
No.
Oh man, it's so, like, it is so awesome. It's DC Pearson, Donald Glover, and someone else, but basically they're a group of guys in their 20s who had a detective agency when they were kids, and they have not grown up from that, so they still have a detective agency in their 20s. It's hilarious. It is this type of comedy, and that's something that I like. If you are not on the wavelength of, like, if you're not buying into the overall, like, over the top, not even over the top, but just silliness of the premise of the movie, then you're not going to have a good time with it. But if you're kind of vibing with it, like any comedy, really, it's something that'll really, really be good. And there were parts in this movie that I like. It wasn't all like laugh out loud funny throughout it, but there were a few like key moments where I was like cackling, like just very much enjoying it. So I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I kept thinking, because it's been I only watched Game Over Man once, which is the Netflix one that with workaholic guys, and similar kind of thing in terms of the setup where we have 3 guys living together, Arrested Development, low on money. In this movie, in the Foggy Mountain movie, they're trying to get this bust of Marie Antoinette and all this stuff that's going to be worth a lot of money, and that's kind of their way out. So this movie is riffing on the Goonies a lot, pretty much in the same way that Game Over Man is riffing on not Aliens, but Die Hard is really the one they're doing primarily, and they mention that multiple times in the movie. And very self-aware about it, blah, blah, blah. And I kept going back to that movie when I was watching Foggy Mountain. I was like, why does this one work and that one doesn't? And I think, I don't really exactly, I think it's just, I think they tried to like improv too much on that movie or something. And I think, not that the writing is like super strong in this movie or anything, but it works. I mean, and maybe you get that in these comedy movies where sometimes it just doesn't work and then other times it does. And I think Workaholics is like a funny show. I think those guys are funny, but that movie didn't work, and this one just did. So hard to know. I mean, I think this one goes into a little more like it gets a little sillier with like the cult stuff, and you have the purple overalls. Bowen Yang plays kind of the cult leader and that sort of thing. I don't think it is funny. I don't think it's something that makes this movie a lot like deeper or anything, or makes the roster that much more impressive. It's just like another thing that they're sort of riffing on. So I don't know. This one just works because the jokes are funny. They do have there are 2 park ranger characters played by Megan Stalter and X Mayo, I think is how they say their names. They were both quite funny, I thought.
I thought so too.
And sort of work into the sort of like, zipper weave in with these 3 guys. It just sort of works. I thought both of them were on the same wavelength with these kind of goofy guys. There's sort of a little fling with John and one of the ladies and stuff, and they have an instant connection because she also recognizes The Grinch as the scariest movie of all time.
Right.
So they're just going to hit it off, and so I thought that was funny. I thought they were 2 performers that I was like, it would be cool to see them even in some other offshoot thing or whatever. So they were strong. Yeah,
I definitely agree, and it's something that I kind of feel like those, like the introduction of those characters felt like it wouldn't have, it maybe shouldn't have worked as well as it did, because they are very direct and there's not a lot of subtlety to it, because they're kind of orchestrating like suddenly they're like following them so that they can get the treasure too, and everything. And there's some kind of on the nose stuff with that, but there's just something about the overall energy combined with the chemistry of pretty much everyone involved is just very charismatic, and there's a lot of chemistry between them throughout the movie. And again, it's just, if you buy into the silliness of the premise and also the fact that they don't call too much attention to the absurdity of it all throughout the movie, it works in its own special way. I really like that.
I am getting to the age. So they mentioned that they are 26.
Yeah.
It's a joke early on. They say, like, we're in our 20s. We're 26. We're not 21.
Right.
There's a difference. Yeah. I don't know what is going on with the youths today, but I love the nostalgia that we're having for mid-aughts rock.
Yes.
They do a roller skate sequence early on to DANCE by Justice, which is an incredible song.
Mm-hmm.
Take Me Out by Franz Ferdinand is played on 2 different occasions. The first one's kind of teased, and then the second one they did the full thing. There's a fight anthem set to Young Folks by Peter, Bjorn, and John, and I'm just like,
it's incredible.
I'm just like, I don't know how old these guys are. I know that doesn't really necessarily matter. I just like that we are putting these songs back in the zeitgeist however we can, because they're great songs. And it's just good to hear them in movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, especially like Take Me Out, when that song was teased, like, it was one of those things where I haven't listened to Franz Ferdinand in a while, and like, in my brain, I was trying to remember like the song. I was trying to remember the song. Like, in my head, I was like singing it as it was being teased. And I was like, wait, what is that song? It was like one of those things where it's like right on the tip of my tongue. And then when it recurs later in the movie, like right before like it really comes in, I was like, oh yeah, it's Take Me Out. Take Me Out. That's right. But yeah, the needle drops in this were just a delight, an absolute delight. And yeah, I really loved them. The over the top stuff too is just, it was really good. I was very impressed. There's
one thing in this that I wasn't like offended by it or anything, but you sort of, when troops like this or people, you sort of get a sense of their comic sensibilities or sort of what they're drawn to. It was of note to me how many pedophile jokes there were in this movie.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like offended. It's just, I was, after a while, I was like,
yeah. There's
one like in the cult members. There's one early on, the Johnny Flames thing, how that thing ends.
Yes.
That's really funny.
Oh yeah.
And it's not that they weren't funny, but it's just, again, you sort of get it and you're just like, all right, interesting. How many times we're going to that well?
Interesting. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But,
I definitely agree with you there. That, and there was something else, but I can't remember. But I do think that it was, I noted this in my notes. I just put, there's a quote from one of the park rangers that it's interesting that this line was in the movie, since a similar line that we referenced in the review for Thanksgiving was also in, where she says, "Every day of my life I've killed something." Or I think that was Conan O'Brien's line.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh, nice. It's a good line.
Interesting parallel.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's funny that Conan would be this rugged outdoorsman. That was a funny bit. He's funny in it. I mean, we usually see him pop up in movies very often.
No.
So it was fun to watch him, sort of riff with them. I'm sure he was on set for like 2 days. But, probably more than that, because he's in the fight at the end. But regardless, he was, everyone loves Conan. He's awesome. And it makes sense that he would be Ben's dad, of course, too.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Of course, there's a whole thing about how he has to win his dad's, respect so he can run the business. Yeah, I would say Martin was my favorite of the three. I like his thing of the, he's not really a born again Christian. He's just like a at gunpoint Christian. Right. They really say, essentially. He's at this adult baptism, and they're like, dude, you're not like strung out on drugs or out of prison. Like, why are you getting baptized at 26? That's the whole thing. That was all funny.
That was
and the
great.
suit he wears, of course. There's these
so
two different
great.
suits he has that are amazing. That are just ridiculous suits. And he was, of the three, he was kind of the one that sort of, I think, showed up the most for me here. But they're the funny guys. And, of course, it's what's going to come across with this movie, of course, is that they're, their friendship is going to be tested and then, come out stronger in the end. We know that's where this is going.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I agree. Martin is definitely the highlight for me, but the other two are just as good, in my opinion. They're just the comedic energy, like the chemistry among the three of them is just really, they work really, really well together. There was one line, I won't spoil what it is, but a line that John has when it's the tasing scene. Like,
yes.
It is just it's interesting also because of the context of the joke. But anyway, but the line that he says was just so out of left field that, like, I paused it and I was just cackling and I was just like, this is good. I enjoyed this movie. So
that reminded me of the Ricky Bobby stabbing himself in the leg.
Oh yeah,
sort of thing.
Yep.
But it gets it's a different sort of thing.
Absolutely,
it's very funny. Without spoiling anything, too, I will say the person who is doing the voiceover in this movie. Mm-hmm. And there's a line towards the very, very end of the movie that I thought was who does the voiceover and all that stuff. And then the line that they have kind of wrapping everything up, I thought was all really funny. I'm glad that they got that person to do it. That was a good gag too. So
nice.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It's an hour and a half. It's on Peacock.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
It's, I think it's one of those ones that might get sort of overlooked. Who knows if people will come to it. I don't know how much they're advertising it. I don't really know.
Yeah. I don't know either. Yeah. But
I saw I saw it this morning with a big bowl of cereal. I mean, ideal conditions.
Yep.
So
I saw it this afternoon after seeing a guy dressed up as a pilgrim massacre a bunch of people in a town. So yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. So I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. Brent, what did you end up rating it on Letterboxd?
Yeah, 3.5.
3.5.
Well.
Nice.
Yep.
So that is our review of Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain, and I guess that'll basically do it for the episode. Brent, thank you once again for joining me once again on the show. Can you tell people where they can find you online and where they can find more of your reviews and work and everything?
Yeah, pretty much everything. The best place to find it is awakeinthedark.com. That's all my written reviews, everything I write for What's Up, all my podcast episodes, my Letterbox, Facebook, Twitter is all sort of linked there. But yeah, you can pretty much find me. I think it's Awake in the Dark Reviews on Instagram and Threads. It's AITD Reviews on Twitter /X and Facebook. I think it's Awake in the Dark Reviews on Facebook as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I think, just Awake in the Dark on Letterboxd.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, I'll put links to all of that in the show notes, of course. Also read his review of Thanksgiving. That's going to be posting tomorrow, right? Yeah. So by the time you guys are listening to this, it's been a couple of days. So as you're sitting around the Thanksgiving table, definitely print out Brent's Thanksgiving review, read it
line by line,
family.
Pass it around. Yeah.
Yes, this is what I'm thankful for. So thank you once again, Brent. Next time on the podcast, since we're going weekly, I feel very weird saying that. Just like it's
you can do
pressure.
It, man.
I thank you.
One step at a time.
I hope so. But next week we are going to be reviewing Napoleon, and with a secondary review of May-December, which will be on Netflix on December 1st. So stay tuned for that next week on the show. In the meantime, check out patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm going to start playing us out here. Patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Tons and tons and tons of stuff. I'm doing Patreon potpourri episodes where I'm reviewing stuff that I watch for award season. So there's going to be a lot of content over there. Those are full-length episodes. Also, weekly reviews of Stephen King-related stuff. So that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you guys once again for listening, and thank you, Brent, for joining me. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for having me.
And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon-exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. The movie, thankfully, doesn't go too hard on the nostalgia, although the nostalgia is a very important component of the movie overall. So I think by having those 8-bit visual things periodically throughout the movie, I think that also enhances the just strong nostalgia base for the movie. So what I mean by that is...
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.